Facebook. It's Reid from readaboutsex.com. Today's a sexy day because we've got Girl Sex 101's Allison Moon guest starring today.
Good job.
You want to say? You can say your thing. You can say
That's okay.
it's Allison Moon
That's
from
fine.
Girl Sex 101.
Me. It's nice.
All right. But as you sign on, let me know if you can hear us because I've got a new onboard, meaning plug into my camera, mic, super cool microphone that just arrived in the mail from Sweetwater Audio. So thank you, Sweetwater, for shipping it to me fast. And thank you, Tim Ferriss, for mentioning this microphone on the podcast recently. But it wasn't. It was Tim's guest who mentioned this. And this is a Shure MV88 microphone, I think. And it's for iPhones and iPads, and you plug it right into the phone, and it's a little onboard shotgun mic.
Oh, so it plugs into the power source, not the audio jack. That's cool.
Yeah, oh yeah, this is the bomb diggity. But I think it's a Shure MV88. I'm so excited I forgot the name. I'll put it in the links. So how does it sound?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear? You can read that? Holy crap. Are you like a hawk? So Allison and I leave tomorrow. We're going to Soul Play Festival, and we're going to talk about polyamory. You and I are teaching Polycurious 101.
Yep.
I'm teaching an energetic sex workshop.
I'm laying naked by the pool.
You're laying naked by the pool, and I'm also moderating a discussion panel on consent. And Soul Play Festival is a music and hey everybody, is a music and dance festival, and I've asked a few people to talk about consent, and everybody on the panel is somebody who identifies as a woman or identifies as female, and I had one of the people that'll be on the panel ask me, like, why are there not more men on the panel? And I was relaying to Allison that the reason I want to hear more from women is I have some opinions that marginalized voices should be heard more from, and I think when it comes to consent, in the way that culture is, hearing advice from female-bodied type folk, not men, basically. Like,
yeah, not just female-bodied.
Trans
women
women
suffer from a lot
of
non-consent issues.
I have ideas about consent, but I don't know that hearing consent ideas from a white man or a panel of white men is the most useful for the Soul Play Festival. And since I've got you here, and I was thinking about consent stuff today. What are some of your thoughts about like consent mistakes or mistakes people make about consent? Because you're not going to be on the panel.
Those are two different things, though. So
talk about whatever you want.
So a consent mistake is considered distinct from consent violation in kind of the way like a misdemeanor is separate from a felony.
What I meant was like mistakes people make around consent. I said consent mistake, but
that's why I was curious.
The title of this talk, I'm screwing all this up. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna let Allison talk. I'm gonna listen. What do you want to say, honey?
Well, I mean, so consent is fucking necessary. Consent is sexy, but it's also fucking necessary. I think that consent gets a bad rap because a lot of people are very afraid of non-consent. I think a lot of people are very good-natured, good people who just don't quite understand how these things work and don't quite understand how to get permission for things in a way that still keeps the energy of sexiness going, assuming that that's the energy that's present in the space. I think that a lot of people are just afraid about talking about sex in general. And so if you have to ask somebody a question about what you'd like to do to their body sexually, suddenly that becomes that can kick up a lot of different things. It can kick up shame, it can kick up a fear of pleasure, it can kick up gender issues, it can kick up just all sorts of sexual, like having to be intimate and honest with somebody. And that's all within the realm of consent. I think that, however, when consent is done, period, not even just done well, but just done, it allows for much greater intimacy. It gives people permission to ask for things that they want and create upgrades and just gives people their voices. I've been very fortunate. Like, I actually had sex with somebody who was a lot younger than me, a man. And I was very worried at first because I'm like, this kid grew up watching porn, right? And I was like, oh no, like he's gonna be all over the place. What was really delightful was because the conversation about consent has been happening mostly in response to horror stories we're hearing on campuses, right? But people don't know how to handle the conversation, but at least we're starting to have it. When I was in college, we certainly weren't talking about consent. We weren't sitting everybody down and saying, okay, like, here's how not to assault somebody. Now it seems like it's happening. It's certainly not there yet societally, but it's happening more and more. And I think it's really fun and sexy to be able to ask in a sexy way, can I do this to you, or would you do this to me? I think there's a lot of room for yumminess in that space, but until you've experienced it or until you've witnessed it, it's hard to sometimes believe. So that's why I encourage people to upgrade who they're sleeping with. Don't sleep with shitty people. And at the same time, like, sleep with people who actively care about your voice, not people who are trying to figure out what they can get away with. That's that. Yeah, and I mean, okay, so I have more to say. And this isn't just about sexual space, right? There's plenty of ways in which our consent is taken away from us all the time. The example we always use in the sex education community is that, like, as a baby, we're taught that our opinion doesn't always matter. We don't want our diapers changed, but mom and dad, they're gonna do it to you anyway because it needs to be done. Kids aren't necessarily completely capable of knowing what's best for them sometimes. So we do actively teach people, even as children, that their consent is a gray area. Where this becomes important is it starts as a baby, but it keeps on going through life. And the other example we use is like, kiss grandma. You have to kiss grandma before we leave. Grandma, you know, grandma cooked this wonderful dinner for us for Thanksgiving. You have to kiss her before you leave. And it tells us that there's only one way to show affection to somebody, and that's by using our bodies, and we have people who can tell us what to do with our bodies at any time. Again, these feel like minor things, and in many ways, oftentimes they are minor things. But if we teach our kids that so young, how do we ever learn our voices? How do we ever learn how to say, no, actually, I don't want to kiss that person, or no, actually, I have the right to say no to you and push you away? We have to teach our kids that as well. And so one of the upgrades we encourage parents is ask your child how they would like to show affection to grandma. You can do all sorts of fun things. You can wiggle noses, you can touch elbows, you can give hugs, you can share a beautiful drawing. All these different ways that show, like, you love grandma, grandma loves you, but it doesn't necessarily involve having to have your physical boundaries violated in order to be able to show that affection. That stuff lasts, right?
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes, you know, because a lot of us have been raised to not really be thinking about what we like or exploring our own bodies, because a lot of us have had our agency taken away, even in things as subtle as, you know, go kiss grandma before we go, and maybe in not so subtle ways. Mm-hmm. And because we haven't been given a lot of permission to talk openly, and then you add on to it that the English language is a horrible language for nuanced words about sexuality and pleasure. You know, we can arrive at being adults and not really have a lot of practice or a lot of words for talking about things, or we're dating somebody or sleeping with somebody or hooking up with somebody who doesn't have a lot of practice or isn't really good at using their words. And then it creates this just really clunky fraught situation. And for me as a sex educator who teaches about consent and lectures on it, you know, at colleges and stuff, like, I don't always know what I need immediately in the moment and can speak up about it 100% of the time, like, just like that. So if I have lag time or might feel pressured or somebody's really, you know, excited about trying to create something, and so I don't want to disappoint them, I don't want to tell them that I changed my mind. I mean, obviously this is coming through the lens of an extroverted white guy, but like, if I'm not doing and speaking up immediately 100% of the time, what is really useful to understand is that so many people have this lag time or this hesitation, and they're not speaking up. And when we just assume everybody can speak up because we're adults, you're making an assumption that is so wrong. And then we don't have really good checking in habits and protocols to slow things down, to check in and be like, hey, you know, how are we doing? You know, do we want to stop? Do we want to change our minds? Like, I'm just, you know, kind of a nerd about checking in. I hope this isn't totally ruining the moment, but I'd rather ruin the moment checking in.
And I love the experience of checking in so much that the person's like, oh my God, shut up, just do all these things. Blanket yes, right? When somebody tells me I have a blanket yes, it makes me able to relax into knowing that they've got their voice, it's handled. That doesn't mean I'm not going to ever check in for the rest of the time, but it means that I can trust them to speak up more than I might somebody else that doesn't even know what a blanket yes is, or needs me to check in about every single thing.
Now I want to make big blankets that say yes on one side and you flip it over, it says no on the other side. So you literally have a blanket yes.
There are actually pillowcases that say yes, no, and maybe.
Ooh.
Yeah, there are. And I think it's was designed for like a Spencer's gift for like the newlyweds, you know?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes, call us Spencer's. That was a free plug. Yeah, so again, like, I just mostly, as we're preparing to go off grid for a couple of days, so I don't know that I'll be able to, Allison's stopping and smelling the roses.
It smells so good, you should smell it. Here, I'm gonna hold this.
Okay, talk to them.
So yeah, we're gonna be off the grid for a couple of days, talking to awesome people about all sorts of things.
Pretty good.
Isn't that nice? But yeah, so I appreciate you bringing up this conversation because it's important.
Well, I'm also warming up for it because I'm nervous that I created a panel where I'm the only guy on it. And for those of you who know, like, Reid really does have a need to feel special. I'll take I'll take responsibility and take the hit for asking, non-male identified folks to be on the panel because I'm interested in what they have to say. And in the dance community, I'm not a dancer. What I do is more like flailing, but in the dance community, where some of the dance events, the rules can be no talking on the dance floor.
Right.
And it's all about like reading body language. I'm really interested in hearing from dancers what their advice is around getting consent and navigating these situations that can already be fraught.
Yeah, and so this is another thing, and this is why talking about non-sexual space is really important, because like consent is also, again, necessary and sexy, but it's also polite. One of the best exercises you do in welcome circles for play parties is talking about energetic non-consent.
Yeah, gaze.
Which is what basically, and every woman in the world knows this feeling of being on a city bus and having somebody leering, right? Where they're just energetically trying to attack you even if they're staying right in their seats. And if you felt it, you know what it's like. That's an element of non-consent too. I'm not suggesting that people's gazes should be policed, but I do think it's something to, again, as a polite person, to be aware of when you're trying to manipulate somebody's energetic space from a distance. And this is what often when we talk about the male gaze, or just creepy guys leering at us on the street, they don't have to say a word, and yet we still feel violated, right? And that's not women overreacting, that's a genuine experience. And so in the dance floor situation, you cannot even be touching somebody, but if you're just dancing, feeling self-expressed in your own space, and you have somebody who's actively trying to alter your space by just staring at you, that is a form of non-consent. And again, it's not necessarily a crime, but it's just not polite. And if we want to try and create communities where people can feel safe feeling self-expressed, if you want to create a society where women can wear that fucking fly outfit on the bus without it being like a scary choice, being invested in a space that is polite around consent is just as important as being invested in a space where people actively police their actions.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about this at the panel, because there's questions I have and just, things I want to kind of set up for people to talk about. It's only a 60-minute panel.
Wow.
I'm going to check in and see if maybe we can record the panel and maybe I can upload it, but I have to get approval from everybody and I can only do that on site. But we don't have Wi-Fi up there. We have very limited, so I don't think I'll be able to Facebook Live while we're at the festival. So we'll Facebook Live tomorrow while we're driving. And
I'm driving.
While Allison's driving and I am being an amazing passenger because Allison's a much better driver than I am and she actually knows how to get places.
No, I'm not a better driver. I'm a worse passenger.
Yep, that's why it works. She's a worse passenger than me, ladies and gentlemen. Lead with your strengths. Lead with your strengths. And avoid your weaknesses. So yeah, just thank you for letting us walk around the neighborhood.
Can I share one thing before I go? Because it's been on my mind.
Yeah, and then also let me know, how is the sound quality? I really want to know about the microphone.
So at the very top of the video, I just want to acknowledge the fact that I use the word female-bodied, which I don't use.
I use female-bodied.
I don't like it because trans women are female-bodied whether they've had surgery or not. So I apologize to anybody who's watching that, who heard that and was like, that's weird. I don't like that phrase.
I'll take the hit for that.
Yeah.
And I'm always welcoming upgrades for people to either call me in or call me out directly and say, Reid, don't use that word, use this word. You're doing some amazing stuff with Girl Sex 101 and the Spanish translation.
Yes, it's so close to being done.
And all kinds of neat, nerdy things. Maybe we'll have a video about that one day.
In Spanish.
In Spanish. I will not be speaking Spanish. That is not a good idea. So yeah, and for those of you who are heading up to Soul Play tomorrow, it is sold out. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. And if you have questions or concerns about the consent panel or how I ran it, or you want to talk to me, find me at Soul Play. I am actually really, really open to having conversations and getting feedback from people. And I made some choices, and I'll take responsibility for them. And why don't we just end on that? We'll end on Allison smelling the roses, ladies and gentlemen.
Is it okay if I smell you?
I like getting consent from the flowers. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Sorry if this conversation was clunky. Yeah, I guess I'm just nervous about the talk.
You're fine.
I want it to go well.
You're fine.
All right, bye.
Bye.
We love you.